This is my Ficus fusion tree. It's a Ficus benjamina. It started as 3 trees that I braided together about 8 years ago, and I've been fusing ever since. This video, I'm going to show you some of the history since my last post on this, which was back in November of 24. And I'm going to actually pot it up into a bonsai pot today, finally. It's kind of like graduation day. But first, we'll go back to where we left off in November of 24. This was the point when I started to really focus on the structure. Because for the first, 7 years or so, I mainly just kind of let it go wild and roughly trimmed it here and there, just focusing on fusing the trunks. But now that the trunks are all fused together, I wanted to start putting some effort into getting the structure right. So I made some pretty big cuts that day. Got rid of the aerial roots, which were kind of a novelty, cool thing at first, but I really don't think it added much to the look. If anything, it kind of made it look messy. So you know how big cuts go. It starts with a few, then they get bigger and bolder. I made that into a cutting. Pretty good little cutting. Took some wiring off. Even branches I was trying to fuse together. Some worked, some didn't. And I just looked for anywhere that I could bring the height down. Any branch that had foliage down below, I took off the foliage above. That was one where some aerial roots kind of wrapped themselves around the trunk and through the trunk somehow. I don't really know how that happened. Kind of weird. And in some cases I let them there, and in other cases I took them off. So this one I took off. It was too separated. I kind of wanted to get away from the aerial root look. Clean up the cut a little bit. So it looks a little awkward, but I knew that it would on that day. Started as that, and by the time I was done, ended up like that. I put that clear plastic wrap around the upper part of the trunk there with some wire around it. I've since gotten away from the plastic wrap. Fast forward to March, about 4 months later. But I've since gotten away from the plastic wrap because it holds moisture in there. So on most trees where I tried it, it left the bark kind of gross and almost moldy in a way. But in March, I just trimmed it up again. It's got that weird scraggly growth that you tend to get in wintertime. You'll see the difference here in a minute when I post a clip from July. The difference in growth in wintertime versus summertime is just night and day. So I have to make one confession. The repotting process, I lost most of the footage from doing the actual repotting. So I've got before and after footage, but the actual footage of me trimming roots and potting it up, I shouldn't even say I lost. I accidentally deleted myself, so I have no one to blame but me, which is way worse. I like blaming someone else better. So I apologize for not having that part of the footage, but I do have coverage of what it looks like in the bonsai pot afterward. And I got to say, I think it turned out pretty cool. So you'll see that here in a moment as well. In the meantime, on this day, I put some guy wires in there to kind of bring some branches down a little bit. Most of the cuts healed up okay. So at this point in time, or this stage in March, it really looked like it was under construction still. You know, wires everywhere, cuts, and big bald spot right in the middle on top. Fast forward to May, so about 2 months later, it's grown out, but otherwise not a lot has changed. And the growth is that weak, scraggly looking wintertime growth that's not very attractive. Dark, kind of matte looking leaves, not glossy or bright. If you look real closely, you can actually see where the tree is still, it's got the, distinct braiding to it. I've got a lot of videos on other fusions as well. If you're into fusing trees together and experimenting, I would recommend checking out some of those playlists. I've learned quite a bit on what to do and not to do when fusing trees, mostly from trial and error. And ironically, to this one, the one thing I would recommend not doing is braiding them together. It takes a lot longer to fuse together when they're braided like that. When they're just side by side, straight up and down, next to each other, they fuse a lot faster. The trunk does look interesting though, with the remnants of it being braided together like that. It just kind of gives it some movement and looks cool. Here it is in July, so 2 months after that. See the difference in growth? Bright, shiny, healthy leaves. It's very full. There's not, 2 inches in between each leaf, in between each internode. It's just thicker, fuller, healthier. So summertime growth, by far, outdoes anything in winter, which is kind of common sense, I guess. But when you see it one clip next to another, it's pretty striking and obvious. So in July, I just trimmed it up again. Took a look at the fusion here in a second. So I'll kind of go fast forward a little bit here through the trimming process since we just looked at that. And for the most part, I'm just doing a clip and grow style. So let the branches grow out about 6 leaves or so. Trim it back down to about 2, give or take, sometimes 1. And the leaf that you cut it down to should be pointing in the direction that you want the branch to grow. Hence, clip and grow. But I'm starting to see the difference structure-wise. Compare it right now to November of last year in that first clip. And you can see that it's starting to look more normal, I guess. More like a miniature tree and less like a bunch of cuttings wrapped together. The structure is starting to take on some shape and form and look correct. You don't have big long branches shooting out one way and bald in another spot. It's just evening out, which is good. Here's a look at that trunk. Some of those branches are really wanting to grow straight up, which they always do. Wherever possible, like in that case, I can just clip it right there, and then that's the direction that branch will go now. I sort of learned my lesson with this plastic wrap at this point. It really seemed like a good idea there for a while. It took me seeing bad results consistently to stop doing this. And as you can see, even with that plastic tubing around the wire and then putting the wire around the plastic, it still can bite into the bark. As you can see right there. So rather than plastic wrap, as of this summer, I've started using vet tape, or just that bandage tape. That branch is still kind of a problem for me. So here's the tape I'm using. Just regular bandage tape or vet tape, I hear it called. The color blends in better. It's got the same ability of holding it together with a little bit of stretch to it. It's not sticky, and it doesn't hold moisture. That's the important part. Because that was the problem with that plastic wrap, is that it just holds moisture in there. Once moisture gets in, it just holds it in there. Then it gets gross. So I put a little more wire on there to kind of give that branch more movement in the direction that I was hoping for it to go. And I was fairly happy with how it was ending up on this day. At this point, I still wasn't sure when I was going to pot it into a bonsai pot. I knew the time was getting relatively near. It's the day I'd always looked forward to, honestly, with this tree. It was the day that it was finally ready to be potted into a bonsai pot. I wired up a couple more branches there, as you can see. July is a great time to do that with ficus, as long as you can remember to keep an eye on it, because they grow so vigorously in the summer that wire will cut into the bark in no time. And it takes a while, depending on how bad it bites in, it takes a while for that to heal, sometimes years. There we go. So again, it's still kind of under construction at this point. There's probably a lot more wiring I could have done. But then you got wires on top of wires on top of wires. So that's where I left off on that day in July. Fast forward to current time. That's a look right before. And then to the bane of my existence, I lost the footage in between. I could not believe it. But here it is after. I really wish I could have shared the footage of the actual process. I was honestly kind of devastated when I deleted it. I couldn't believe what a stupid mistake it was. But the important part is I at least got the after footage. So here's what it looks like in this new bonsai pot. I'm actually really happy with it. So this is 2 months after the last clip in July. It's this sort of dark, bluish, almost blackish colored pot. But I just thought it fit it perfectly. It was the right size, still lots of room to grow, but shallow enough to start training the roots. And because of the wide canopy and the branches, I just thought that complemented the length of the pot as well. But the structure is finally in a pretty decent spot, so I'm real happy with how it's turning out. So this was 1 week ago today, and then here it is as of just today, just on my lunch break. I walked outside and got a clip of it. So here's a closer view of that fusion. I did some additional wiring the day that I potted it up. As you can see, some wire is gone. Some new wire is there. You can see some wiring scars there on the branch that was bottom left. Just goes to show how quickly it can eat into the bark. You can see the big cut scar there on the right. So all in all, it's looking good. So I apologize for losing the footage, but otherwise, I thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good rest of your day.